Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Paradigm Shifting, How to Make Durable Skills a New Prioritized Core. My name is Stephanie Short. I'm Vice President of Partnerships at America Succeeds. First, I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us for today's discussion. I'm biased, but I think it's really important. So let me set the stage for you quickly. In a research partnership with Emsi Burning Glass, America Succeeds proved the demand for durable skills in the workforce. Durable skills are a combination of how you use what you know, skills like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and character skills like leadership and resilience. And we believe that better preparing every student with durable skills not only sets them up for success in the workplace, regardless of industry, occupation, or geography, but is a critical lever in advancing equity. Now, over the past 2 years, we've been going around the country talking to all of you, many of you in this room, about durable skills, and there's really broad agreement about the foundational importance of this skill set, but we hear pushback in 2 areas. First, how do we teach these skills, and how do we measure them? Now, one of the reasons I'm so excited to be up here with our 4 panelists is that all 4 of these innovators are doing exactly that in some way. From micro lessons that go directly to students, to leading systems and technology innovations, to a global employer with incredibly high demand for durable skills that is powering prosperity for workers and learners through their programs. And so, now that we've kind of set the stage with all of that, let's dig in to how we make durable skills a new priority in the education paradigm. And Courtney, let's start with you. Talk to us about your approach at SkillsLine for how you prepare students with durable skills.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. And very excited to be here today. So my name's Courtney Reilly. I'm the co-founder of a company called SkillsLine. And we're using a micro lesson platform to teach the foundations of durable skills. And our approach is really about empowering every learner to understand what these skills are, have the language to identify and discuss them, and then have strategies so that they can be intentional about building these skills in all of the activities that they do in both their learning environments and out-of-school environments, and as they transition to the next step and take those skills with them.
That's a really key part of this, right? That we talk about durable skills being present in a lot of learning opportunities today, but it's a little bit like applesauce. Your kids love eating it, and they don't know that there's a bunch of vitamins packed inside. We do a terrible job about the vitamins piece, and that's really what's kind of so interesting about your approach.
I love that analogy and will now be using it. Thank you.
Just to give me credit, right? I will. Susan, I would love to kind of switch gears. As a superintendent, you're providing durable skills learning opportunities across a variety of schools. So let's talk about what durable skills look like at Highline.
Sure, thanks, Stephanie, and good morning, everybody. So Highline Public Schools, just to give you a little bit of context, is a richly diverse school system of just under 18,000 students just south of Seattle. And why I think this conversation is so important is I think, so as a superintendent, my primary job is to make sure that our students graduate, and in Highline, we have a promise that we will know every student by name, strength, and need, so they graduate prepared for the future they choose. So my primary job is to make sure that our students graduate with a path that they've chosen for themselves. But I think that this conversation matters because we don't often talk about, as I think educational leaders, that also part of our responsibility is to our local economy. And how am I preparing graduates for the jobs that exist in the Puget Sound region? And I don't think we talk about that enough. So in Highline, what we've done, and you know, Corey and other partners are here, how do we provide different learning opportunities for students so that they can find what sort of lights that fire within them and that they see a path for themselves? Okay, well, we're on the wrong panel.
More energy from all of you.
I can't compete with that. Boom. Thank you, everybody. So, we are intentionally creating those opportunities. And I'll give the most recent example. We have one high school in our district called Raisbeck Aviation High School. It's an aerospace aviation themed. Obviously, we're in the shadow of Boeing, Alaska Airlines. It just makes sense. But we actually launched it during the pandemic. Totally smart move. A maritime high school. So it's preparing students for jobs in the maritime field, which are huge in our region. And we're partnering with Mastery Transcript on how are we measuring what our kids know and are able to do in different ways that links to what they will be doing once they graduate. And so it's exciting work. And I will say when it comes to measurement, the ultimate measure is that they graduate with a diploma that's a meaningful ticket to a path that they are prepared for and have chosen for themselves, not a path that was predetermined for them by an adult who put limitations on them based on their own belief systems or other things. So it's about opportunity and letting kids see a future for themselves.
I want to just double click on so many of the things that you're talking about there. We could talk about this all day, but it is a really great segue into, Mike, what you're doing. Mastery Transcript is all about a more holistic view of a student. So what is the connection between MTC and durable skills?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Mastery Transcript Consortium is a nonprofit, and we're a collective of schools, over 400, some here in the States, some international. What our schools have in common is that all of them are working to drive real innovations in teaching and learning at the local level. But we're also trying to band together for collective action in terms of policy, in terms of basically changing our interactions with higher education around what they expect from our students, and also making sure that we have connections to workforce. So when you think about what our schools have in common, the Mastery Transcript, which we'll talk about later, is really more of a guiding principle. The real action is in the consortium. It's in these schools collaborating, sharing best practices around innovation. And so if you look at what's happening in the classrooms of our school, and they're a diverse cohort. We've got private schools, public, charter, urban, rural, you name it. But what they all have in common is a real focus on innovating what happens inside their classrooms and outside for learning experiences. So you're going to see a lot of approaches that are project-based, having kids do complex, kind of long-form work, either in teams or individually in capstones. Those projects are going to be very problem-focused, real-world problems, external clients, trying to create a sense of urgency and stakes, making sure that it isn't make work, it isn't like the cookbook science you do in chemistry lab, but actual stuff that matters. The projects are almost always process-based. And so we'll talk a little bit about design thinking or entrepreneurship, but the reason those methodologies come up a lot in our schools is that they are methodologies. They're frameworks to teach kids how to solve problems and think and apply different frameworks at different stages. And they're iterative. They give kids chance to kind of reflect, repeat, test, and try again. And then lastly, they're personalized. The kids have a tremendous amount of agency. I know agency is sometimes an overused buzzword, but for us, it just means letting kids choose something they care about. If you want kids to go deep, then you have to give them autonomy, sometimes to make mistakes, to try things that it turns out are not very productive, and then to iterate and try again. And so all of this stuff, when done in tandem, becomes really deeply interdisciplinary, and we think it's sort of this amazing crucible for developing these durable skills.
So a student graduates from Highline with a Mastery Transcript and ends up in Dave's world at Intuit. Dave, will you talk to us a little bit about what durable skills mean to your company, how you're preparing learners and workers with this skill set?
Yeah, happy to. So good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Zasada, and I lead corporate responsibility at Intuit. And if you're not familiar with Intuit by name, it's the company that creates products such as QuickBooks, TurboTax, Credit Karma, et cetera. So we're a global company, over 10,000 employees, and the work that we do in the corporate responsibility team at Intuit is really all about doing good. So we focus in 3 different areas. We focus on job readiness, which is really the work we do in education. And we focus on job creation, bringing jobs to underserved communities that are in need. And then we also have a focus on having a positive impact on climate. The work that we do in job readiness with education is heavily focused on trying to build finance skills and durable skills, with, again, an emphasis in underserved school districts and specifically, represented students. So, at Intuit, it's really kind of built into our culture, the need to learn and apply design thinking. For those not familiar with design thinking, it's a creative approach to problem solving, not invented at Intuit, used at most innovative companies, certainly in the Valley and beyond. And all 10,000 plus employees are trained on it. We believe it's one of our superpowers. It's what helps make us think like a 30-plus-year-old startup every day. And as we decided to really focus on trying to help schools in need, when we focus on finance skills and durable skills, part of our portfolio is a focus on trying to help teach design thinking. So with design thinking, it's really like a crash course in durable skills. So you can't be successful in utilizing design thinking unless you're able to collaborate, problem solve, critical thinking, leadership, et cetera. So, we, with the schools that we work with, teach the methodology of design thinking, and one of the major benefits is the opportunity to both develop durable skills and provide an opportunity for teachers to assess them. So, and then we also provide opportunities to apply the knowledge of design thinking through a variety of challenges, like a social innovation challenge, et cetera. So that's a bit about kind of what we do. And within Intuit, we talk an awful lot when we're either assessing current employees or hiring employees. We talk a lot about the what and the how. So the what is really more about the technical skills that someone has and what they're doing, but we care just as much about the how. And the how is really all around durable skills. How are they actually being successful within the organization and in their job?
And for jobs, all jobs in the U.S., we have this in our data, more than 77% of them require durable skills. At an innovative company like Intuit, 90+% of jobs require 3 or more durable skills. So as we're thinking about opportunities for the future, as we're thinking about opening up more equity, diversity, inclusion in the workforce, these are really become a powerful tool in getting to this future that we all want to see. Now, lots of people in this room and at this conference are trying to solve similar problems. And I know from speaking at our experience, policy and advocacy, that there are a lot of barriers on the policy side keeping this from scale. So let's just call that a barrier bucket and throw that bucket aside for the purpose of our conversation. And let's talk about the other barriers. What are barriers that you have faced and how have you looked to overcome them in scaling your work to students?
I'll
Who
go.
would like to start?
Absolutely. I think one of the things as we talk to schools and why we created a product like SkillsLine is that to actually teach these skills, what they are, how you can develop them, that comes from a lot of different disciplines. I mean, it comes from psychology, organizational psychology, communications, philosophy. So that's not what our teachers are being prepared to do. They're teaching content subjects and trying to weave these in because they're so important. But in terms of teaching the actual language and the definitions and the strategies that underlie these skills that they're using every day, that's hard. They're not equipped to do it. They don't have time to do it. And so, that's really what we were trying to solve for with SkillsLine and the micro lessons, a very easy, lightweight way along the side to get that direct instruction in there so that now students have the language, understand what they're learning and developing when they're doing all of these fantastic, experiences and opportunities that you all are creating for them.
Well, and absolutely, it's a massive metacognitive exercise, right? So I mean,
Metacognition is a durable skill, by the way.
Absolutely. So I think when we talk about barriers, I don't think that bureaucracy has been perfected any better by any institution than the public K-12 education system. I mean, we have perfected what it means to be a bureaucracy, and I think inherent to that is not just a limitation on how nimble we can be, but almost a refuting of being nimble in a lot of ways. And I think that to the point that you're making, forcing ourselves as K-12 educators in the public education space to look at this differently, to name it, and to invest in the learning of the adults to make this a priority. And I will also say it's more challenging than ever right now. People are tired. They're tired. Our educators are tired. And yet we are in this moment where the opportunity to innovate and to push on the edges of K-12 has never been greater, but the capacity for people to do it is really not that high just because of the level of exhaustion. But I do think that the time for these conversations is now, because the window for, I don't know if you all remember at the beginning of the pandemic, all of the pretty talk about how we weren't going to go back to normal. K-12, we're not going back to normal. We're going to come back better. We're going to be transformed. Find me a district in this country that has come back transformed. We are doing exactly the same stuff we were doing pre-pandemic. And shame on us. Shame on all of us. And so I think this conversation has to happen because it's going to propel us to look at K-12 education differently, which we have to do.
Well, there's an urgent need, right, to shift the paradigm. And it's a really difficult shift to be making. So Mike and Dave, anything to add to the barriers?
I'll add two. One is very high level, and I'd call it one of almost culture. And the other is very tactical and specific, and it's about platforms. So at the cultural level, it's almost kind of affective. One of the challenges, if you think of like when I was describing the models in our schools, they're messy, they're noisy, the answers aren't always apparent, the kids are asking real questions, sometimes they're kind of fumphing around until they get it right. It's also a lot of fun. They're joyful places. And I always pause after I say that because it's like, oh, hippie alert, here we go. This isn't serious, right? We have this idea that no, school is supposed to be hard, it's supposed to be rigorous. It's preparation, college preparation in many cases. And so we've allowed this narrative to take hold that if the school looks like the kids are having too much fun, they can't be taking it seriously. It can't be real learning. And that is really deeply ingrained in a lot of sort of the decisions we make, the decisions parents make. So one of the things I think is really, I am very optimistic about, I'm grateful to have durable skills, is as a communications tool. I speak all the time to school boards, and I speak to groups of parents who are, what is this new kind of assessment model? And being able to show them, look, backwards design, we all want good outcomes for our kids. We want a good future for our kids. We want them to have a good life, economic security, happiness. These are the skills they need. And if you can help see that light bulb go on, then sort of there's a more openness to those models. But it's going to be an ongoing communication effort that none of us can do alone. The second more tactical one is that if you want to track the progress towards durable skills, you need a place to track that. And I will say the strategy we've pursued at MTC for finding a good LMS that is mastery-based and competency-based for our schools is like a build, buy, partner, all of the above. If we can find something, we'll buy it. If we can get some money, we'll try and build it. But I have to tell you, I come to this event very optimistic every year, and I always walk away a little bit disappointed because the fundamental architecture of most LMSs is centered on the course. And it is literally coded into these systems. It is very, very hard, if not impossible, to retrofit a course-based LMS to think about a world of interdisciplinary competencies where the adults in a school, many of them could be sharing the evaluation task and feedback across kids in a variety of different domains. So we could do a whole panel just on that, but that's a real tactical issue. And if you've got a solution out there, or if you've got some money and you want to give it to us to solve it, we're happy to talk to you afterwards.
And I would just build on a couple of the other comments that are already made. We consistently run into the issue of prioritization. There's no doubt about it. Teachers are focused heavily on teaching to standards, teaching and ultimately trying to support the dedication for college readiness, and not every child, quite frankly, that's the path that they want to take, especially these days. So there's a prioritization issue, there's a measurement issue. Durable skills are typically difficult to measure, and teachers are just of course held accountable to giving a score of some kind, and it's just not as simple to measure something like collaboration as it is grammar. So that's one of the first questions we get asked is how am I going to measure it and show a score for this? So that really kind of brings me to probably the biggest barrier that we run into, which is just staff development, professional development. So teachers need help and support in terms of figuring out how do I integrate the teaching of durable skills into my existing courses. They don't necessarily want a separate course, is what we find, specifically dedicated to durable skills. They want to know how they can integrate it into what they're already doing, and how do they do that successfully and easily. So
Dave, I would love for you to build on that a little bit. You are a business that is investing a lot in equipping educators with tools to help them do this work. But what advice would you have to your fellow business leaders, corporate leaders, for maybe why they should engage, how they should engage in doing some of this work? Are there just some simple, is it an easy solution to get engaged?
So the approach that we take, at least, and we've had a lot of learnings along the way as well. Certainly not everything we've tried has worked, but it first starts, we approach it with kind of a value co-creation model. So we don't try to develop anything in a silo. We recognize that we just have one point of view, so we always collaborate with other organizations like America Succeeds, as we're doing right now, and also the school districts themselves to try to figure out what the right solution is that'll actually move the needle and be creative. So, that probably first and foremost is the most important. So, and then we always try to be clear up front what the success metrics look like, what are we trying to achieve, and, do we have a path to being able to measure that, to be able to show, that we've actually had an impact.
I think that's an important note to underscore. We say a lot, certainly on the education side, what gets measured tends to be what matters in a school culture. But I think it is equally important on a business and company side. And we're looking at KPIs and metrics on the short term, on the long term, and evaluating our success on that measure. So I would turn that to those on the education side, building on the co-creation, engaging business in the process. What else can those of us in this room do to help kind of create more of these solutions, to scale more of these solutions? There are no easy answers, turns out.
I'll jump in real quickly. So first of all, just how many folks here lead schools or school systems? Just show of hands. Okay, and so how many of you have either call it a competency-based learner profile or a portrait of a graduate? Okay, awesome. So like maybe about half. Yeah, I would say very tactically, that is probably the best place to start. Because the process of creating that, backwards design, sort of what do we want our learners to be able to do when they leave our campuses, is both useful, like it's a really good artifact to have, but it's also as a process to bring the community together, to get the right stakeholders together and say, hey, what do we really care about? What are we trying to do here? Those things can and should borrow, hopefully. They should look a lot like durable skills. I've got the coaster here, maybe you guys do too. But they also should be grounded in your community. Like what do you care about locally? And then once you have that, then the next move is to find ways, even if you're starting small, to incorporate those deeply into the assessment models that you're using in your school. And the beauty of that model is you can start with individual teachers doing individual project-based experiences and kind of land and expand and grow from there. So there's no easy answers. I don't mean to imply that any of this stuff is easy. But if you have two first moves to make, just tactically, so we can start doing this work in the right way, those would be the two I would recommend.
And I would also add, I think one of the best ways that we help our students see earning their high school diploma as a ticket to the future they choose is by giving them a window into the world of work. And so internships are huge. And so being willing to open up to having high school students, where we are, and it took us a while to convince some places like Blue Origin and Boeing and others that, yes, our high school kids can be a value add, right? Like if you're willing to partner with us, I think we can create some powerful learning opportunities for these kids, but frankly, also create the pipeline for your future workforce. So I think that there needs to be, and I know it happens to some degree, but I think it could be happening a lot more internship opportunities for our kids.
Can I briefly just build on that? Because it's, yes, 100%, 1,000% even. And the beauty of those kinds of environments, leaving to learn programs, real world CAPS is here. CAPS is amazing if you're not familiar with them. Basically giving kids sort of career-focused experiential learning opportunities. It's kind of a cheat code for community buy-in. Because what happens is parents who might be skeptical about sort of these new kind of teaching models look at it and say, well, that's very pragmatic. I can see that. That's useful. This is about what they're going to do after. And for parents, and unfortunately there are too many and with too much influence, parents who are overly focused on college preparation, and particularly on certain kinds of prestige brand colleges, it also works for them because it makes the kids really interesting applicants. Selfishly, I would just sort of praise, like, the kids that use the Mastery Transcript this year have gotten into 250 colleges and universities no GPA, no credit hours, not even courses in many cases. And they didn't do it because of the transcript. They did it because the schools they go to make them awesome applicants. If you spend 4 years in a really inquiry-based environment, thinking deeply about your work, reflecting on it, being given space to make decisions, by the time you're in a college interview, or never mind writing a college essay, these kids just crackle. They're radiant with this metacognitive energy and a real sense of what they're doing and why. And I say this as a parent of teenagers. I love my son, but he comes home from high school, and I say, hey, what'd you work on? This is And I'm hoping he'll shine more, in the right settings with other adults. But if those are skills, those interview skills are a form of durable skills, like being able to talk articulately about what you're doing and why. So that sense of what our friends in the UK would call oracy is really interesting too.
Can I add one more thing really quickly? So to your point, I do think that we, in the public education space, are very good at taking any issue and polarizing it. We've actually mastered it. And so, for a while there, it was everyone's got to go to four-year college. Everyone's going to four-year college. And I think we finally have gotten that pendulum to come back and say, I want every student from Highline to graduate college ready, not necessarily college bound. That's their choice. And so I think we've gotten better at elevating equally the different paths that our kids choose and saying that's okay. And the reason that I also think this conversation is very important is it builds faith and confidence in public education. At a time when, friends, we need that more than ever. And so I'm going to give just a really quick anecdote about sort of the power of this. So we have in Highline our Puget Sound Skills Center. It's, for lack of a better term, it's our vocational program, right? So it's firefighting, it's dental assisting, it's CAD, it's all of that. And it's also machinists. And this is several years ago. The then CEO of Boeing Commercial Airplanes did an interview in the Seattle Times about how they couldn't find machinists. They literally did not have enough people to staff. And I thought, I got your machinist right here, friend. So I said to my assistant, you get me a conversation with Ray, because we need to talk about this. Fast forward, he came to our State of the District address and interviewed a young woman who had just graduated from our Skills Center and was working as a machinist at Boeing. And by the way, after doing that for a little while, Boeing will give her $17,000 a year for her education, which is also a fun fact that we don't, I think, share with our kids enough. But at one point, she was talking about what her job was, and I don't remember it exactly, but she was in charge of riveting, making sure the rivets on the airplane were secured. That's important. I don't know about you, but when I'm 35,000 feet up in the air, I want things riveted to perfection, right? And so when we talk about durable skills, there's how do we help the public understand how important this is, and in doing so, help them understand how important public education is.
I did just want to add on that point to the idea of polarization. Durable skills, in both anecdotally and from a data perspective, we have proven are just so valuable. And one thing I can say in having these conversations over and over and over again is that it's a great uniting force in the conversation, right? We all agree, we all want success for our kids. The messiness in how we get there is the challenge that we're trying to overcome. But this idea of instilling kids with durable skills, regardless of your background, is something that is inspiring and makes this work slightly easier to do. Getting to this paradigm shift that we're really pushing for is all about gentle pressure relentlessly applied. And unfortunately, because we work in policy and K-12 and these other spaces, that pressure, it has to be applied over such long time horizons. So I'm hoping that everyone in this room is kind of getting this sense of hope that there is some tactical steps that we can take to get there, that there's a reason to do it, and that everybody kind of wants the same thing. We're reaching for the same North Star, so that maybe there's an opportunity to collaborate. Now, teeing you up maybe for a
yes, I think so, but it also goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, and one of the things that Mike called out about students who have the opportunity to spend 4 years immersed in this type of culture, and what that does to how they come out into the world. I think one of the places that we can all start is really around culture building with our adults. So how do we change the language that they're using with each other, with their students, so that we have these durable skills embedded and students are starting to hear it consistently? We have a fantastic school partner, Batesville High School, Andy Allen right over there, who's doing that with his entire staff right now and seeing just this incredible change because of it. And I think that's a great way that we can think about starting.
So, Dave, I would love to bring it back to you on the employer side. We had the pleasure of meeting 6-7 months ago and chatting about this. And at the time, Intuit was not calling them durable skills, but we really connected on the value of durable skills as a term. Would you like to talk about like what the culture change looks like even on a company side?
Yeah, I mean, so to kind of go back to that conversation, we were using kind of some of the traditional terms, whether it was soft skills, 21st century skills, and actually Stephanie was the one that introduced me to the durable skills terminology, which I immediately embraced and is now how we talk about it within Intuit and also as we're working with school districts. And so, again, within Intuit, as we're looking for individuals to hire, the hiring process we go through is heavily focused not just on the technical, skills, but also on, on the how, on the durable skills. We will typically say, individuals get hired for the technical skills, they'll get fired for lack of soft skills or durable skills. So it tends to be almost glossed over, we notice from other organizations, but we spend an awful lot of time focusing on the ability for someone who might come into the organization to really fit into our culture, which is just a very heavy collaborative culture. It's steeped in design thinking, et cetera. So you just can't be successful unless you have those types of skills. So
we've kind of seen, right, there's clearly demand at the employer level. We all speak to this. We see it in our work all the time. As we kind of round out to the last part of our conversation, I'd love for you to look ahead, maybe reflect on what are you most excited about? What is the biggest opportunity if we get to this new paradigm where every student is prepared with durable skills?
I want to offer a quick anecdote because just something that I heard that I come back to a lot, especially as this work is really hard to do this year especially. But we were working with a teacher in San Antonio ISD. She had senior high school students, a class that was not expected to be going on to college. They were in kind of CTE trying to figure out what was next. And they used SkillsLine for a little bit, trying it out. And she told us about a student who came up to her after class and said, I never knew I had self-limiting beliefs before. I didn't recognize that. But now I see them and I can change them. And how powerful is that? This was after going through a micro lesson on self-limiting beliefs. That language had never been there for her. And what would her high school experience have looked like if that had happened in 9th grade? Where would she have been? What would the opportunities that she was looking at, how would those have looked different? And so, when I think about what it means to recenter our education system around durable skills first, which is all about the human and knowing that human, the human knowing themselves, right, and developing themselves, and then putting all of the academics around that, like what a more powerful world, empowering world for our young people to then have the opportunities afterwards.
Love that. Dave.
Yeah, I'll share an innovation, I guess, that I've been inspired by. So as I travel around the country meeting with school districts, there's been one example that I think is really appropriate here. And in West Virginia, they have a statewide program called Simulated Workplace. And what Simulated Workplace is, it runs throughout their CTE program statewide. It's not a curriculum, it's a culture. And the assistant state superintendent had, spent a lot of time working with industry to understand, to what degree, the success of the kids who are graduating out of their CTE program, how they were performing, what the retention rates were, et cetera. And what she was hearing was, you send me good kids who technically are strong, but where they really lack is in the durable skills, is ultimately what they were saying. So they created this model called Simulated Workplace where they transformed the typical CTE class into a business. So whether it's a graphic design business or whether it's a welding business, carpentry, whatever CTE program it is, the students actually take on roles just in a typical business, whether it's a president role or bookkeeping role or marketing, et cetera, in addition to the technical skills that they create. And it forces them to step up and develop leadership skills. They have to go out and communicate with industry to actually sell their services. They have to collaborate as a team to figure out how they're going to get jobs done. The teacher ultimately becomes really the consultant or the facilitator on the side, and the students run the class. And it's just so cool to see this kind of form of project-based learning really ultimately come to life. And there's all sorts of great data in terms of the success that they've had, everything from attendance to graduation rates to a variety of different great success metrics. But they essentially added the durable skills component to a technical skills program, and that is what ultimately makes the program considered one of the best in the country.
Improving equity outcomes and opportunity with durable skills. Yep. Any final thoughts, Mike?
I'll throw one out there. So I talked before about obstacles, and I always like to end on an up note. So if you are hopeful for large-scale system change, right? If you want to see sort of some of these models really get embraced at the national or even global level, one of the things that makes me really optimistic is that in the old model, even if kids went through these amazing experiences, there was a missing link in the chain in terms of them leveraging those experiences to whatever was next, right? Could be career, could be college, as long as they choose that path, to build on Susan's point. We put the work of telling the story on those same kids. You've done a rich experience, you've learned all these amazing things, now go build a LinkedIn page or write a college essay or build a resume. And so they come through these amazing experiences and then they're just kind of left to their own devices to tell that story. But all the pieces that we need in place to build a model in which every kid can have access to a competency-based framework that shows the world what they can actually do with evidence of what they've learned, that is credentialed by the third-party sort of certifiers that really matter, all those pieces are there. The plumbing is there now. The blockchain is there to make it truly student-owned and kind of like tamper-proof. I know blockchain, AI, but yeah, all these pieces are there and they're starting to snap into place. I was at a great panel yesterday, and Jason, I'm going to mangle his last name, I think it was Tishko, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, was basically talking about how they're investing incredibly heavily to help employers understand that the workforce of tomorrow is going to show up with these kinds of credentials that really demonstrate what they can do, and it's their responsibility to be ready to accept them. And so it's an exciting time to be doing the work.
Well, I will then close us out, adding to what Mike is saying, that there is a big convergence of things, why we're all at this conference together, why we're having conversations about durable skills. America Succeeds is also really pushing to move forward this work, so grab yourself a coaster that's in the room. We're announcing a partnership with CompTIA to do even more of the same, to scale it, to bring employers to the table, to kind of infuse more hope into what we're all looking at in the coming years after coming out of what were some really difficult years. And so I just want to close us out and say thank you to all of our incredible panelists for the work that you're doing. Thank you to everyone else at this conference who's willing to listen to these ideas, who's approaching, transforming pathways into the future in their own innovative, compelling ways. And I invite you all to collaborate with our four incredible speakers, with our team, with CompTIA, with each other, because it's only in working together that we will truly shift the education paradigm of tomorrow. So with that, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.